The following are true scary stories found on Reddit. I would like to give a huge thank you to Be.Busta for your help on this collaboration. I've been a fan of yours for a really long time and have been subscribed to you since before I even started doing these videos. And you actually did inspire me to start doing these videos. So thank you for that. And thank you for this opportunity to work with you. After this video, don't forget to head over to his channel and subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, as well as check out the other part of our collaboration we've worked on together. He chose a great topic, so you're not going to want to miss it. Without any further ado, let's begin. I attend a small liberal arts university with a student population of about 3,600. However, during the summer, this population obviously goes down considerably, and the campus is mostly empty. You'll occasionally see someone who works there, or a student working there during the summer, but for the most part, it is pretty deserted. The summer between my junior and senior year, I worked on campus for the team that hosts and runs any conferences or events that take place. The school rent out dorms and even spaces for groups, and the students are in charge of cleaning, organizing, and managing these groups for their stay. A sort of hospitality team. As part of this, we would have someone at the front desks of the main university building and any dorms which were occupied between 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. to field any questions or to otherwise help as needed. We were each required to work a certain number of shifts each week, and one of the shifts I signed up for was 7 p.m. through 11 p.m. at the main university building. Absolutely nothing happened that night. I spent the evening catching up on The Daily Show. Rough job, I know. Nobody came by the center. Nobody called. We were trusted with the keys to the building, and whoever had the last shift of the evening had to lock up. As I stood outside locking the door, I hear someone ask from behind me, "What time is it?" Having locked the door, I turned around, looked at my cell phone, and replied, "It's 11:01. Although the guy was around my age, I knew he wasn't a student. It was a small enough school where even if you didn't know everyone, you generally recognized faces, and you definitely knew the handful of students working there over the summer. I started to walk across campus to the dorm where they housed all of the summer student workers, but I only got about 10 feet before I knew something was wrong. I stopped and turned around and saw that there was a guy following behind me, and he stopped as well. I figured he could just be heading the same way, so I continued walking, and we played this weird game of red light, green light about twice more for about another 50 feet. It was at that moment I realized that this was very, very wrong, and he was directly following me. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, praying maybe he was just lost. "I'm locked out of my place tonight," he replied. Not sure what to respond to that, I just said, "I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you get back in." Author's note: if this isn't a classic case of girls being conditioned to be polite and non-aggressive, even in a case where they shouldn't be expected to be, then I don't know what is. I had no idea what to do, so I just continued walking. My mind was racing. I turned to look at him a few times, and even directly stopped and looked at him once, to let him know that I saw him, and I was on to him. I felt so foolish. I didn't know whether to scream, or run, or call someone on my cell phone. These all, looking back, would have been much better options than just continuing to walk towards my residence with him following behind me. But it's like my brain wasn't working. I was panicking. I didn't have a purse or anything, so I know he wasn't looking to rob me. Thankfully, I passed by a dorm that had occupants in it, and my friend Mike, who was manning the front desk there that night, had decided to step out to smoke a cigarette. I had never been so glad to see someone smoking a cancer stick. I yelled, "Mike! Hi!" and started towards him. He looked over and saw me, saw the guy following me, and somehow immediately knew something was wrong. I don't know whether it was the panic on my face or the fact that the guy was acting so shady, but I am so glad that he recognized it. I didn't even have to say anything. He just looked at me and said, "Oh, I'm done here. Let's head back together." Of course, as soon as he saw Mike, my follower peeled off. I told Mike what happened, and as we walked back, we kept an eye out for him. But he was nowhere to be found. I thought that was the end of it. However, as we walked across the campus, we saw another summer worker, Julie, walking really fast, looking behind her. Sure enough, there was Creeper McCreeperson. He had moved on quickly. "Julie!" we yelled. As soon as she saw us, her face crumpled into the most relieved look that I had ever seen. The creeper ran away, and we all walked back together to the dorm. As soon as we were inside, we were completely freaking out and getting our phones out to call the campus police when we heard the doorknob to the dorm violently jiggling. Luckily, you need an access card to get inside, but whoever was out there, one guess, was trying awfully hard to get in. Campus police never found him, and it's the only time I've ever thanked Mike for having a nicotine addiction. I don't take any more late night shifts, but I continue to watch The Daily Show.
About 4 years ago, I was a junior at a small college in LA County. Bordering my town was a large cavernous region known as Turnbull Canyon. It's the kind of place that has a healthy amount of creepy folklore surrounding it, with an area emphatically known as Hell's Gates. Stories of occultic activity, gang killings, abandoned mental institutions and the like are common. The kind of shit you hear about any place old enough to have a reputation. In reality, most of the stories were spurned from a tragedy that occurred years prior. A woman's body was found at the base of the canyon, and from then on, the rest is history. Nevertheless, when a photographer friend asked me and another buddy to go out to the canyon in order to take some photos of the LA skyline, I had to oblige. The canyon was about a 30-minute drive from our campus, and we had been listening to the King of Limbs the entire drive, which proved to be the perfect ambience to get me feeling pretty anxious about our little excursion. I should also note that I'm a pretty anxious guy in general, so travelling out to a remote area preceded by its reputation for scary occurrences admittedly had me thinking twice about the decision. At the top of the canyon there's a small residential area, a few ritzy houses surrounded by trees and woods. In order to venture into the canyon itself, you have to follow a main trail with several smaller arteries that split off into other directions, but ultimately culminate at the base of the steep hill adorned with an old water tower overlooking the city. Anyhow, we parked our car at the top of the canyon road, divvied up the camera gear, and made our way out to the tailhead. After walking the trail for about 5 minutes, Dave, the photographer, decided it was time to set up his first shot, while Jeff, our other friend, and I kept watch. Eventually, he got the shot he needed and we continued walking for another 5 or so minutes before Dave decided to set up his next shot. At this point, the trailhead had disappeared behind us completely, and we were a little less than a quarter of the way to the water tower. While setting up the tripod, we noticed the faint glow of headlights off in the distance, which was strange because the trail isn't meant for cars, nor is it big enough for them to pass through. If I recall, it's only about 5 feet wide, with shrubbery on both sides. This was clearly a bit of a red flag for us as we were the only people out there, so we immediately packed up our things and ducked off into the brush, waiting for the car to pass on. Eventually, an old pickup truck idled to a stop about 50 yards from where we were hiding. The truck itself was old and rickety, sitting on a lifted chassis, the bed of which was missing entirely. Growing up in the country, I knew it as the type of truck typically owned by backwoods folk who lived in the boonies and preferred to be left to their own devices. We watched in agonizing anticipation as the truck just idled in place for several minutes before flooring it down one of the other trails, the roar of the engine echoing through the canyon. Clearly, we were spooked at this point, the three of us speculating as to our next step. Jeff and I were reluctant to continue, while Dave assured us that it was probably nothing. Perhaps just a guy off-roading, as he put it. So, with great reluctance, Jeff and I trudged on behind Dave toward the water tower to get his final shots. Nevertheless, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the truck. I mean, I knew plenty of people in high school who would go off-roading for fun in the woods, but never on finicky canyon trails barely wide enough to hike on, let alone drive. It just didn't sit right with me. After walking without interference for about an hour, we finally made it out to the water tower, climbed the hill to the top, and took in the view of the city. Dave, once again, started setting up his equipment while Jeff and I stood on both sides of the water tower, keeping watch just in case the truck came back. Nothing, though. At this point, it's around 3 a.m. Dave decides that he's got all the shots he needs, so we pack up our equipment and commit to heading back before it gets too late, seeing as how all of us have classes in just a few hours. Just as we're preparing to descend the hill, the truck comes roaring out of the canyon below us, back onto the trail, at which point the driver attempts to climb the hill, revving the engine loudly. Scared shitless, the three of us slid off to the side of the hill into the brush, clinging to the plants and rocks. As the truck finally made it atop the hill, slowly driving around the tower, we could see the glow of the headlights each time it circled above us. After waiting for nearly 10 minutes, while also trying not to make any noise, the truck eventually descended the hill, stopping in the middle of the trail not more than 100 yards away. We watched as a scruffy man, mid-50s, stepped out of the idling truck and into the glow of its headlights, moseying around while looking at the ground. He then knelt down, looking at something in the dirt, surveying the area intently. As he did so, it became increasingly apparent that he was tracking something. Our footprints. This next part chills me to the bone. As my friends and I huddled together watching it in complete terror, another man wearing a long, dark parka emerged from the brush, right where we had been hiking, joining the other man at his side. Apparently, he had been out there the entire time we were walking the trail, just watching us, following behind at a safe distance. The two of them talked for a long while, but we couldn't hear a word. They continued scanning the area, looking at our footprints, but eventually got in the truck and drove off down one of the forks in the trail. We sat in silence for a long time, waiting nearly 2 hours just to ensure the coast was clear, at which point we made like hell back to the car, down the canyon and back to our campus, just in time for class. I have no idea who those men were or why they were tracking us, and I have no desire to know.
The following is a verified story that may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Back in 2011 through 2012, my mom would regularly hang out with Jack, an older man whose basement we lived in. We were semi-poor, and his basement was cheap and basically a separate house. She had recently broken up, again, with my youngest brother's father. It's kind of funny, because Jack was the ex's stepfather for a long time, and they remained kind of close, but he recognized how much of a piece of shit his son was, and was always supportive of my mom. Anyways, one day when my mother and brother went over to his house, There was another man who was both friends and business acquaintances with Jack. He did a lot of buying and reselling on sites like eBay and turned a nice profit. The man was quite well off financially, and he had his own construction business, or something along those lines. Since both my mother and the man both saw Jack a lot, they got to know one another, and the man started to ask my mom out on numerous occasions, but she always said no. He would get more and more persistent, even asking her to move in with him, since he knew she was struggling for money and he had a big house. She said she always had a funny feeling from him, and that's why she would always turn him down. Time passes, unrelated, but almost equally as fucked up. Things happen, and my mother ends up moving a few towns away with her brother, and didn't really have much contact with Jack or his friend. All is well, at least until I get an almost hysterical call from my mother. She rushes over to my dad's house, where I was living. I was around 15 at the time, and shows me an article. I get a cold, sinking feeling, and a lump forms in my belly. The man who was pursuing her, the man who seemed off, the man I heard about in passing, was convicted of possessing child pornography, the purchasing of an infant, and rape of said infant. It turns out, the whole time he was pursuing my mom, he was abusing this poor child, and possibly more. It still sickens me and scares me senseless, thinking about that this man was around, talked to, and watched my brother, who was 4 at the time. Mom and I both know that it's more than likely he was using her to get close to my brother. It just goes to show, always listen to your instincts.
So, I'm a 16-year-old female, and I grew up in a sheltered household. I was a nerd and still am so. I did a lot of online roleplay because I found it was a great outlet for my writing, and I really enjoyed the people. On one forum, I met a guy named John. John and I had a lot of fun with our role-playing, and eventually our characters ended up together, which brought on real feelings from myself and him. He told me he was 17 and was going to high school in Washington while I lived in California. We would talk for hours online, messaging one another, sending pics back and forth. Well, things took a step up when he asked me to go into a video chat with him one day to prove I was a girl. This was brought on because we found out one of the more sexual roleplayers who cybered a lot turned out that they were not a girl but actually a dude. Seeing as I trusted John, I agreed and got on cam. He didn't have a cam, claiming he used the family computer and couldn't convince his parents the need for one. Then, being on cam with him became a regular thing, just me sitting there on cam and him typing back sans cam. That's when he started to ask me to do more sexual things. It started out simple, like give me your best sexy look or bite your lower lip. I thought it was harmless flirting and complied like an idiot. He would tell me he was falling for me and I was beautiful, and me being a teen girl with image issues fell for every single line. We became boyfriend and girlfriend as much as you can be with someone whom you've never met. I was so desperate to make him happy and keep him around because I had 2 boyfriends previously and both ended with heartache on both sides of the coin, so I was lonely. So when he started asking me to do more sexual things on camera, and I hesitated, he would always use the line, "I thought you loved me," and I'd cave. For a long time I felt ashamed of myself and dirty, but now I just feel stupid. He would send me pictures of his junk and place digital camera angles that never showed his face that he would upload and email to me. It made me uncomfortable, but I wasn't going to make him angry and tell him to stop because I thought I needed him. Then, things got worse. We texted a lot back and forth, but when I would not text him back right away, he would start bombarding me with messages of why I hated him and why wouldn't I answer, and claims of cheating on him. It was overstressing me so much that I finally caved and told one of my female friends about it, and she told me that his behaviour was abusive and I should tell him to knock it off or break up with him. So I did. The next time he went off on me, I told him, "I'm not okay with you emotionally manipulating me, so either stop doing it or we're done." And he lost his shit. He started cussing up a storm, calling me names, saying I was a horrible person. So I told him we were over. I cried for about 2 days. It hurt, but my friend consoled me and told me it was for the best and that I'd move on to something healthy. He started to message me every time I got online though. His messages ranged from calling me names to begging me to take him back because he loved me. I finally blocked him and left the forum game where I first met him. He would make a new Yahoo account and message me again with the same shit. Then he started telling me he was now suicidal because of me and I should feel sorry that he was going to kill himself. Because I'm a nice person, I fell for it, hook, line and sinker. We talked for hours via text and I took him back if he promised to not hurt himself. He said he wouldn't hurt himself if he could see me again online, so I got a cam with him. Then he told me to do sexual things for him again, and I tried to say no, but he said if I cared about him, I would, or he was going to slit his wrists. My friend's words popped back up into my head. "You're a good girl, and you deserve someone who isn't going to manipulate you." I told him no, and to fuck off, and not message me anymore. I blocked him, made a new account for myself, made a new mail, and thought it was done. Fast forward about 2 weeks. I had not heard anything from him the past 2 weeks. No texts or emails, or anything. I thought I was in the clear and done with him. But one day, after school, I was waiting by the bus stop in front of the school to head home. I wasn't alone, but in a crowd of classmates and friends as we waited. Suddenly, a brown sedan pulled up and a man in his mid-20s stepped out of the car and started saying my name. I looked around because I was in a crowd of people. My first name is very common, so I thought he was talking to someone else. That's when he walked straight up to me and grabbed me very roughly by the shoulders and started pulling me towards his car. I screamed out for him to let me go, but his fingers were like iron. Luckily, the other students around took action and some of the guys rushed the dude and tackled him to the ground, while some others went out and got our school police officer. He kept screaming my name and telling them to let him go and that he was my boyfriend. I was stunned to say the least. The cops came and put him in cuffs. Apparently, this man was John. He lied to me about his age and where he was from. He had tracked me down to the school I went to, which he discovered was a school sweater I wore one day on the webcam. The cops searched his car and found rope, duct tape, sleeping pills, some women's clothing, and a huge knife. After the investigation, my parents told me that what his plan was from his testimony. He was going to take me away, and we were going to get married and be happy. It still makes me shiver to this day. I've kicked myself for years over how stupid I was to give this person I knew nothing about information about me, as well as let him manipulate me into doing what I did on camera. He had a record, from what my mother told me, that he raped a girl when he was 19 and she was 14. The last time I saw him was when the cops took him away and he just kept staring at me from the back of the police car, crying.
We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you can catch all of my future content, and then head right over to Be.Busta's channel to confirm you are subscribed to his channel and watch the other part of our collaboration video. Once again, Be.Busta, thank you a lot, bro. I hope to work with you again in the future. If you would like to talk to Be.Busta or me on a more personal level, make sure you add us on Facebook. We have personal pages, so you can actually message us privately on there as well. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.